My fiancé said, "My ex is giving a speech at our wedding. Don't make it awkward." I just smiled. Of course. What she didn't know was that I'd already seen the speech and added my own few lines to it. When he started reading it out loud, the entire hall went silent. I'm 30, and 3 months ago, I was supposed to marry the woman I thought was the love of my life. Her name was Rebecca, 28, and we'd been together for 4 years. I need to tell you what happened at our wedding, because honestly, I'm still processing it myself, and writing this out helps. People keep asking me if I have regrets about what I did. The answer is complicated, but let me tell you the whole story first. Let me back up to where this whole mess started. About 6 weeks before the wedding, she came to me with what she called a small favor. We were at our apartment, folding wedding programs at the kitchen table on a Tuesday evening. I remember it was Tuesday because we'd just gotten Chinese takeout from our usual place, and she just dropped it casually between discussing seating charts and whether her aunt should sit near the band or away from it. "So, I know this might sound weird," she said, not looking up from the programs, her fingers carefully creasing each fold, "but my ex wants to give a speech at our wedding." Her ex, the ex-boyfriend from college, the guy she dated for 3 years before we met, the guy whose name came up way too often in our conversations. I stopped folding mid-crease. "Your ex? You're serious?" "Yeah, I know it's unconventional, but he's really turned his life around and he wants to wish us well. It would mean a lot to him. And honestly, it shows how mature we all are, right? That we can all be friends?" She said this while finally looking up at me with those green eyes that usually melted my resolve. I should mention that her ex had been weirdly present in our relationship from the start. Not physically present, but she talked about him more than I was comfortable with. "Oh, he used to love this restaurant. We went to this beach once. The sunsets were incredible. He introduced me to this band. Nothing that screamed red flag on its own, but enough to make me wonder why her ex was such a recurring character in our love story." "Beck, that's really weird. Why would your ex give a speech at our wedding? What's he even going to say?" She finally looked at me properly, and I saw something in her eyes I didn't recognize. Defensiveness, maybe? Or guilt? "Because he's my friend. He's been part of my life for a long time, and I want him there. We're all adults here. Please don't make this awkward." That phrase. Don't make this awkward. Like I was the insecure boyfriend, the problem for questioning why her ex-boyfriend wanted a spotlight at our wedding. Like my discomfort was the issue, not the bizarre request itself. We argued about it for maybe 20 minutes. She cried a little, said I didn't trust her, said I was being controlling. I wasn't being controlling. I was being normal. But eventually, against every instinct screaming at me, I agreed. I told myself I was being secure, modern, understanding. Looking back, I was being a fool. A complete fool who was so desperate to prove he wasn't the jealous type that he ignored every red flag waving in his face. 2 weeks before the wedding, I was at her parents' house helping her dad move some furniture for a garage sale they were having. Her laptop was open on the kitchen counter, and a notification popped up right as I walked past it. The preview showed, "Wedding speech, final draft." I'm not proud of what I did next, but I clicked it. I told myself I just wanted to see what he was going to say, that I deserved to know since it was my wedding too. And I read the whole thing, standing there in her parents' kitchen with my heart pounding. It started innocent enough. Congratulations to the happy couple, best wishes for a beautiful future, the usual speech stuff that wouldn't raise any eyebrows. But then, about halfway through, it shifted into something else entirely. He wrote about how he and she had a connection that transcends time, and how some loves never really end. They just change form. He wrote about a night last spring when they reconnected and remembered why they fell in love in the first place. Last spring. We were engaged last spring. I proposed in March on a beach in the Outer Banks, and she'd cried and said yes immediately. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the laptop. I kept reading, my stomach turning with each sentence. He ended the speech with, "You'll always be my first love, and I'll always wonder what could have been. But I'm happy for you, really. I hope he knows how lucky he is." I sat there in her parents' kitchen, staring at that screen, listening to her dad humming in the garage, and something in me just broke, and then immediately rebuilt itself into something colder, sharper, more calculating than I'd ever been. I didn't confront her. I didn't scream or throw things or demand answers. Instead, I opened a new draft, copied the entire speech word for word, and I made some surgical additions. Small ones, just a few lines that would make everything crystal clear to everyone in that reception hall. I added specific details, locations, context that would make the vague confession into an explicit one. Then I sent the edited version to him from her email, saying she had made a few tweaks to make it flow better, and asking him to use this final version. I watched the read receipt pop up, delivered, read no response. He just accepted it. The next 2 weeks were the hardest of my life. I went through all the wedding motions like a robot programmed to smile and nod. Rehearsal dinner, where I gave a toast about love and trust. Last-minute vendor calls confirming bouquets and centerpieces. Greeting out-of-town relatives at the hotel and pretending everything was perfect. She kept asking if I was okay, if I was nervous about the wedding, if I was having cold feet. I just smiled every single time and said, "Of course not. I can't wait to marry you." I didn't tell anyone what I'd done, not my best man who'd been my friend since high school, not my parents, not my brother, nobody. I carried that secret like a bomb in my chest, ticking down to detonation. Update 1. The wedding day came. June 14th, a Saturday. It was at a vineyard upstate, about 2 hours from the city, 150 guests, everything she had dreamed about since she was a little girl. She'd shown me her Pinterest board on our third date. I stood at the altar in my custom tux and watched her walk down the aisle in her dress, and part of me still hoped I was wrong about everything. That maybe I'd misunderstood the speech, that maybe there was an explanation that would make this all okay. The ceremony itself went fine, perfect even. We said our vows under an arch covered in white roses. I meant every word of mine, even then, even knowing what I knew. We kissed, everyone cheered and threw rose petals, and we moved to the reception in the barn they'd converted into an event space. Dinner was served at sunset. Filet mignon and salmon, exactly what she wanted. The best man gave his speech, funny stories about us in college and how he knew I'd found the one. Her maid of honor went next, her sister, crying through the whole thing about how she had always been a hopeless romantic. Then the DJ announced, "And now, a special speech from a longtime friend of the bride." I felt my jaw clench. This was it. Her ex stood up from his table near the back. He was wearing a navy suit, his hair slicked back, holding note cards in his slightly trembling hands. She was beaming at him from beside me. Actually beaming with pride, like this was the most normal thing in the world. I felt my mom tense beside me at the head table. She'd never liked this idea. He cleared his throat twice and began, "Hi, everyone. For those who don't know me, I've known the bride for over 10 years now, and I wanted to say a few words on this special day." He continued with the opening lines, the safe stuff about young love and growing up. People smiled politely, though I could see some confused looks about why an ex-boyfriend was speaking at all. My aunt leaned over to my uncle and whispered something. Then he got to the middle section, the part I'd edited. "She and I share a connection that transcends time," he read, his voice still confident and clear. "Some loves never really end. They just change form. Like last spring when we reconnected at the Marriott downtown on April 23rd and spent the night remembering why we fell in love in the first place." I'd added the location. The Marriott downtown. The specific date. April 23rd. Specific. Damning. impossible to misinterpret. His voice faltered slightly as he read the next line, like he was just now really hearing what he was saying, but he kept reading, probably thinking it was too late to stop. I know this might be uncomfortable to hear, but she told me she needed closure before she could fully commit. I hadn't written that line. That was his original. But with my addition before it, it sounded so much worse. It sounded like a confession instead of poetry. The room had gone completely silent. Forks stopped moving halfway to mouths. Conversations died mid-sentence. Wine glasses froze in the air. Her face had drained of all color. She was staring at her ex with absolute horror, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't find words. He continued, seeming to not fully understand what he was reading aloud, his eyes following the words without processing them. She explained that what we had was special, and she needed to explore those feelings one last time before walking down the aisle. "Stop!" She stood up so fast her chair fell backward with a loud crash. "Stop talking!" "That's not stop reading." But her ex, confused and committed now, read the final lines. My lines, the ones I'd added. "So yes, you'll always be my first love. And to the groom, I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but I thought you deserved to know the truth before you made this marriage legal. Some secrets are too big to keep. I hope you can forgive her someday." I'd written that last part. He had clearly not read the speech carefully before standing up there. He looked down at the note cards like they'd betrayed him, then up at me, then at her. His face went completely white. This isn't what you sent me. I don't understand what's happening." My mother-in-law screamed, not yelled, screamed like someone had died. Her father stood up so fast his chair tipped over too, pointing a shaking finger at the ex. "Get out! Get out of my daughter's wedding right now!" She was crying, black mascara running down her face in streams, ruining her professional makeup. "It's not true. Tell them it's not true. Tell them you made this up." Her ex looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. "I didn't write those parts." About the Marriott, about the specific date, about telling him I didn't write any of that. Update 2. I stood up calmly, slowly. Every eye in that room turned to me like I was about to explode. I pulled out my phone with steady hands, opened my photos, and held up a screenshot of the original speech he had written, the one without my edits, saved for exactly this moment. "This is what he originally wrote," I said, my voice steady and clear enough for everyone to hear. "I found it on her laptop 2 weeks ago. I added a few details to make sure everyone understood what reconnected really meant, because I did some digging after reading it." I swiped to the next photo. Hotel records, credit card statements, everything. I'd called the Marriott, claimed I needed records for a credit card dispute, sweet-talked a front desk employee, and found a reservation under her name. April 23rd. One night, checked in at 7 p.m., checked out at 11 a.m. I'd checked our joint credit card that same night. She'd told me she was at a bachelorette spa weekend in the Poconos with her bridesmaids. "April 23rd, I said, zooming in on the receipt on my phone screen. She told me she was at a spa with her bridesmaids. Massages and mimosas, she said, but she was at the Marriott downtown, room 447, with him." The reception exploded into chaos. Her mother was sobbing into her hands, her shoulders shaking violently. My father grabbed my arm, trying to pull me away from the microphone, telling me we should handle this privately. Her bridesmaids were shouting at her ex, calling him every name in the book. My groomsmen were shouting at her, demanding to know if it was true. The photographer was still taking pictures, capturing everything. She ran to me, stumbling in her heels, grabbing both my hands desperately. "Please let me explain. It wasn't like that. It was just closure. It didn't mean anything. I love you. I married you today." I pulled my hands away from her like she was burning me. "You slept with your ex-boyfriend while we were engaged, while I was picking out wedding venues and ordering invitations, and then you invited him to our wedding to give a speech about your eternal connection. What exactly am I misunderstanding here? Her ex was trying to leave, heading for the exit, but my cousin, who played college football and still looked like it, was blocking the door. Not aggressively, just standing there. All 6'4", 250 pounds of him. "Explain the speech," I called out across the room. "Explain why you wrote about her being your first love at my wedding. Explain April 23rd. He looked trapped, like an animal with nowhere to run. "Man, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." She reached out to me in April. She said she was having doubts about the wedding, about whether she was making the right choice. We met up to talk and things happened. We slept together. She told me afterward it was a mistake, that she loved you, that it was just cold feet. But then she wanted me at the wedding as a friend. I wrote the speech to be, I don't know, poetic? To show I'd moved on? I'm an idiot. I'm so stupid. "You're more than an idiot," my father said quietly from beside me. It was the most threatening I'd ever heard him sound in my entire life. She was full-on sobbing now, her carefully styled hair falling out of its pins. "I made a mistake. One mistake. We were supposed to get married today. We did get married today. Doesn't 4 years mean anything to you?" I looked at her, really looked at her, in her $3,000 wedding dress, with her ruined makeup and her desperate eyes. It meant everything. That's why this hurts so much. But you didn't make one mistake. You made 100 small choices that led to this moment. You chose to meet him. You chose to sleep with him. You chose to lie about where you were. You chose to invite him to our wedding. You chose to let him write that speech. You made me feel crazy and controlling for being uncomfortable with how much you talked about him. Every single one of those was a choice. I turned to address the guests, most of whom were family and close friends who'd traveled hours to be here. "I'm sorry you all came out here for this. I'm sorry you wasted your Saturday. The bar is paid for through midnight. Please stay, eat, drink. There's a chocolate fountain and a band. Don't let this ruin your evening completely." Then I walked out, just left. Still in my tux with the boutonniere and everything, got in the vintage car we'd rented for our grand exit, and drove to a hotel near the airport. I didn't even know which hotel until I pulled into the parking lot. My best man followed me in his car. He didn't say much, just sat with me in that generic hotel room while I took off my tux piece by piece and tried to process what I'd just done, what I'd just destroyed. "You knew," he said finally, breaking the silence. "You knew before today." "Yeah." "Why didn't you just call it off? Why the public humiliation?" I thought about that for a long time, staring at the awful hotel art on the wall. Because I needed everyone to know why. If I called it off privately, she would have controlled the narrative. She would have told everyone I got cold feet, or I was jealous, or I was controlling. Her family would have pressured me to forgive her. Her friends would have called me insecure. This way, everyone saw exactly who she is. Everyone knows the truth. He nodded slowly. "That's cold, man. Like really cold." "Yeah, it is. Update 3. The next week was absolute chaos. She called me 47 times the first day alone. I counted. I didn't answer a single one. Her mother showed up at my apartment on day 3, begging me to reconsider, saying she was destroyed and not eating and this would kill her. I told her mother she destroyed this herself, and I closed the door while she was mid-sentence. My parents were incredible through all of it. They handled all the vendor cancellations, the gift returns, the explanations to extended family members who kept calling confused. Dad told me later he'd suspected something was off when she insisted on having her ex at the wedding, but he'd trusted my judgment and didn't want to interfere. The story spread like wildfire. Someone had videoed the speech on their phone and it went viral on TikTok within 48 hours. Over 2 million views. People were calling me a genius, a psychopath, a hero, a villain. Not my intention to go viral, but not my problem either. She had to delete all her social media accounts. Her ex apparently moved to Colorado within 2 weeks to start fresh and escape the attention. About 3 weeks after the wedding that wasn't, she showed up at my door unannounced. She looked terrible. Thinner, exhausted, hollow-eyed, like she hadn't slept since that day. Part of me felt bad. Most of me didn't. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice hoarse. "I'm so sorry. I was scared of commitment and I sabotaged us. I'm in therapy now, twice a week. I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I need you to know that I loved you. I do love you. You were the best thing in my life, and I destroyed it." I didn't invite her in. I stood in the doorway like she was a stranger. Do you know what the worst part is? It's not even the cheating. It's that you were going to let me marry you without telling me. You were going to build our entire marriage on a lie. Stand there in front of everyone we love and promise to be faithful when you'd already broken that promise. That's not love. That's cowardice. She cried on my doorstep for 10 minutes straight. I waited until she finished, handed her a tissue from my pocket, then I closed the door while she was still standing there. I heard through mutual friends that she and her ex aren't together. Apparently, the viral video cost him his job in marketing, and he blames her for not checking the edited speech before sending it back to him. They're both miserable, separately, which seems fitting. I sold the engagement ring and donated half the money to a men's mental health charity, kept the other half for therapy sessions. Because yes, I needed therapy after all that. Revenge doesn't feel as good as people think it does. 4 months later now, I'm doing okay. Not great, but okay. I moved to a new apartment across town, something modern and minimalist that has no memories. Started dating again, very casually, nothing serious. My family still brings up the wedding disaster at every gathering, which is annoying, but they mean well. My brother calls me the legend now. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if I went too far. If public humiliation was too harsh a punishment. If I could have handled it differently, more privately, more maturely. But then I remember reading that speech, and how she was going to let her ex stand up at our wedding and talk about their eternal connection, while I sat there clueless and smiling, and I stopped wondering. Edit 1. A lot of people are asking how I got the hotel records. I didn't actually get official records like you'd need for court. I called the Marriott, said my fiancée had stayed there in April and I needed to verify the dates for our joint credit card statement because there was a discrepancy. The front desk person was new and helpful and confirmed she had checked in April 23rd, checked out April 24th. Not legal for a court case, but enough for me to know the truth. Edit 2. Yes, the marriage license was already signed during the ceremony before the reception. Yes, we're technically legally married on paper. The annulment is in process now. It's been expensive and complicated, but my lawyer says we have solid grounds based on fraud and concealment. Should be finalized by end of year. Edit 3. For those saying I'm vindictive and cruel, maybe I am, but she was going to build our entire marriage on a lie. I gave her the truth she was too cowardly to give me. We're even.